So today's presentation is your online course usability, 10 ways to kick it up a notch. This is part 2 of our 5-part webinar series, taking a closer look at accessibility, brought to you by @ONE and in partnership with the Online Education Initiative. Our presenters today are Rechelle and Katie Palacios. Rechelle has a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling from San Diego State University and has been involved in distance learning for over 20 years. She's a tenured faculty professor, counselor, and the assistive technology specialist at San Diego Miramar College. Rechelle and her husband Joel have 3 almost grown children, a cat, a dog, and a snake. If she wasn't a teacher, she'd be a chef. Her partner in crime today is Katie Palacios. Katie has been an instructional designer for the San Diego Community College District for over 8 years, where she trains and supports faculty in the areas of instructional technology and online pedagogy. She has a master's degree in educational technology from San Diego State University, and she's an online faculty member at Southwestern College. Katie also works with @ONE as an online education initiative peer online course reviewer and instructional designer. She's passionate about teaching online. It brings together her love for teaching and technology, and it challenges her to find fresh, fun, and effective ways to support student learning. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to these lovely ladies, and they'll take us down this journey of your online course usability, 10 ways to kick it up a notch.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. We've got our video cameras on, so we're doing our webcam wave right now to say hi to everybody. We're not going to keep them on, so now's your chance to see us making funny faces. Okay, so we are really excited to be sharing with you today. We're wanting to keep this somewhat informal and allow you to ask some questions along the way. We've also got some poll questions that we're going to be asking you to kind of keep you engaged as well. So a heads up for the poll questions that are out there. And Anna already showed it to you, but underneath your name in the participant window, you'll see those 4 buttons. I just want to draw your attention to the poll response button. You should see the letter A. And then if you click on that, you'll see A through E for your poll responses. So we'll give you the heads up when we're good to go with the polls. So moving on to our next slide. As we get started here, we kind of want you to, these are ideas to chew on because this is a lunchtime seminar. So as you eat your lunch, we've got a few other ideas for you to chew on. We encourage you to kind of think of yourself as a designer. And as teachers, this is really difficult to do. Think of your students as your users. So we're going to kind of take the perspective here of website usability, right? And we want you to think about your experience as a user on a website, any website out there. What makes it frustrating to you? What are some characteristics of websites that maybe are simpler to you? So don't answer those now, but think about those because those topics are going to come up as we make our way through these tips. We also want you to remember that usability helps all students. So we're not only talking here about your DSPS students, for example. We're talking about making our online courses more usable for everybody. And then our last bullet there, you probably already know these. There's not going to be any right or wrong answer to our poll questions. These are kind of preferences that you probably already have an idea about. So there's not a whole lot of magic to this. It'll be interesting to see how your questions kind of guide things here. But I don't expect there to be a whole lot of surprises, but we'll see. We've also got on each slide that we go through, we're going to have like a green box towards the upper right there that's going to have the corresponding UDL principles. And then on the bottom, we'll have the blue box that has the corresponding piece of the OEI rubric. So we've really tried to tie each of our tips to a UDL principle and to the OEI rubric as well. Rechelle, if you're talking, I think you're muted. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Rechelle, make sure your phone isn't muted because I could kind of hear you talking to the wall, but not through the phone. So here we are with our first poll question for you. Option A and option B. And in the yellow box there, you'll see the poll that we have, the question that we have for you. You're an online student, and it's the first day of class. You click on the home page link of your course. Which would you prefer, option A or option B? So here you're doing A or B. Obviously C, D, and E aren't options here. I'm going to give you guys just a quick chance to input that. So option A or option B. And it looks like we've got a really overwhelmingly response there, 26 to 2. I think we're going to poll, if we do publish responses to whiteboard, then we can see it a little bit easier. So a few people didn't respond, but between A and B, overwhelmingly response there of C. Okay, Rechelle's in my office with me, having audio issues over there. So here, we'll do a quick video of me and Rechelle together. Now we're sitting next to each other. Okay. So yeah, we have overwhelmingly response here that B would be your preference if you're clicking on the home page of your course. Let's talk about why. So when you're writing for the web, remember to really think about what really the number of words that you're writing. Omit any needless words. And this is really hard because we are writers, a lot of us, and we tend to explain things and kind of explain things in more than one way. And so we tend to do that also in our online classes, which leads to that page, a page that looks like what we're seeing here on the left, which is just a lot of text and maybe different fonts and different colors. For a new student coming into a brand new course for the very first time, this can look quite overwhelming to them. So a tip that I heard, reduce text by half and then reduce text by half again. It's a really good technique. You'll end up simplifying it a lot. Short words and concise phrases, so keeping it really simple so students know, the actual verbiage that you're using is simple and easy to access, easy to understand. The other thing that I like to remember is this call to action. So on a lot of web pages, right, think about you signing up for an account out on a social media site, or you're trying, you're setting up a profile somewhere, I don't know. That create profile button, whatever they want you to do is on the home page somewhere. The link to that, you're going to find that from the home page. It's going to be the easiest thing that your user can do, right? The designer wants you to do that. So you're going to want to, on your home page, whatever it is that your students need to do, needs to be visible from the home page. In the example on the right, you see that there's a syllabus quiz. And so the link to the syllabus quiz is on the home page. It's easy to find. They're taking it right there. All right.
And I think when you think about the attention span of most people, not just students, that probably if you're really wanting them to read the material, less is really more. A lot of times if you're looking at the option A, there is a lot of information, and even though you have some different color changes, the students may not actually read all of the content. So I think it's really important, as Katie was saying, like in option B, that you're just listing out the real key components and the important information, and even things like the start here. Students are okay with start here, or do this first, or having them actually figure out a way so that they can understand what's really the most important piece of information that you want them to get. So I think organizing things, as Katie was saying, and really making the information that you want them to know be most important.
So next time you're thinking to yourself, gosh, my students aren't reading this homepage. Instead of adding text to it, think about subtracting text from it. Okay, so that was number 10.
So next week,
really quick, there was a question. Kevin asked, I use weekly modules and students can access quizzes under quizzes. Are you saying I should have a direct link inside the module itself?
I use weekly modules and students can access quizzes under quizzes. As long as they can see that quizzes link, from the place, they're at the end of the module and it's time to take the quiz. As long as they can see that quizzes link, then I think that's fine, Kevin.
And I think if there's an expectation that with each module that they're going to do a quiz, I think you're going to have a better chance of them actually doing the quiz. So if you're saying in weekly modules you have some consistency, I think that's going to also help the students be more successful. So we have another little poll here. You're taking an online course. You click on course content. So which one would you prefer? Your option A or option B? We'll keep an eye on watching our polls here.
This is interesting.
You're almost a tie here. Yeah, almost. Catching up.
Interesting. Kevin said he's on the fence. Yeah, this is interesting. The poll itself is kind of on the fence.
Yeah, it looks like we're almost at a 50-50 of our choices here. I think one of the things that maybe that also shows with the different choices is different learning styles, right? Different preferences. Those of you that selected option A, I'm wondering if it was because there was a video or something like that incorporated in it. Maybe those who chose option B really liked the list option where you can kind of see each one of the topics listed out for you to select from. So pretty interesting. So it looks like B has a little more.
Yeah, we had 1, 2, 3. As Anna's reminding us that the count that we're seeing displayed on the whiteboard, the graphical red and blue, doesn't count the people that have voted in the chat window. So those votes didn't get accumulated into the poll. You have to use the polling tool, the A through E answer there for it to get counted in the poll. Let's look at the tips that we're trying to get at with this one.
So chunked and sequenced content. So one of the UDL principles would be simple and intuitive design. So the navigation is consistent and intuitive, sort of like Kevin's question that he just asked about, that students do much better when there is a consistent structure, that they know what to expect, that each one of the class pages uses the same types of icons, they use the same terminology, that is something that students don't want surprises. So here one of the options was no surprises. So the times that the student clicks on something and then an MP3 audio file opens and they don't know, they're thinking it's not working, the page didn't open, but they didn't know that that's actually what it was an MP3 audio file. So I think being really consistent, intuitive, adding the context to content. So explaining what is it? What is the goal of that particular piece of content? And as it says, coherence, right? That there is an actual reason behind each one of the pieces of content. So each page that they look at, each module is set up in the same structure, the same format. The consistency is really important for students.
They're telling you to move closer to the microphone.
Oh, okay, I can talk louder, sorry. So, yes, because I'm yelling over Katie's shoulder here.
All right, our next poll, and remember if you can, use the polling tool to answer this one. You're an online student, a new week has just started, and you're ready to work on your class. What kind of content are you hoping your instructor has posted for you? A, PowerPoint files, I love me some slides. B, video, C, chapter summaries or text by the instructor. D, some kind of publisher materials and games, or E, something else. And the responses are coming in. No. Wow. I guess, yeah, this is interesting because we are doing the webinar. So these are people who are probably more inclined to watch video, maybe.
Because it sure seems that a lot of you want to watch some videos.
Yeah, there's some all of the above, and you didn't get an all of the above option. I should have maybe made E all of the above.
or that you could choose a couple choices. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we're going to go ahead and publish those. So what are we getting at with this one? The variety of content. Skyline wrote it in the chat, multiple modalities. So different students have different preferences on different days. So one day a student might want something, that same student might feel like a different kind of content on a different day. I always, in my mind, I'll be looking through a course, I'll be helping with the course, and it's always troubling when I see one big, long, scrolling page of PPTX PowerPoint files that, and I think in my head, avoid the PowerPoint dump truck. That's the content that's not necessarily learner-centered. It's providing our learners with the variety of content for different kinds of preferences, gives them that, as you see in the UDL principle, the flexibility in use there, right? And we have the OEI Rubric section that correlates to that too. It's presented in a variety of appropriate mechanisms. So whatever tool for the LMS, but also we're talking about images, text, video, OER resources that you find, all sorts of stuff.
And so consider how you are as a student or as a teacher, right? Different teachers use different methods of presenting the course material. Sometimes maybe a video is perfect for it. Maybe you need to use a PowerPoint. Maybe you need to use just some written text or a discussion board. So I think considering the needs of all of your students, I think not only makes your class a little more interesting, but I think it also shows the students that you are wanting them to use multiple senses, not just reading or not just watching the video. So I think having a little variety, we like this little, the little picture here that says, one size fits all, except for you, of course. So I think getting out of the mindset that all of our students are the same, probably, as you know, is probably not true. So adding a little variety is really beneficial for our students. So here we are again, another poll. So as an online instructor, where do you get your course content? A, you write your own. B, mostly publish your content. C, I use OER content. Or D, other. And that probably could be one that you might have a couple of choices.
Yeah,
but you're stuck with one option. You need to pick one.
OER is open educational resources, for those of you who are new to that. Yes, pick your primary.
And don't forget to use the polling feature so we can kind of collect the data.
Okay, those looks like those came in. Let's do that. Polling. Oops. Publish. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so there's the responses there for that one. So lots of I write my own content. Cool. Cool. How about this option?
Students contribute content. So with the UDL principle of a community of learners, if we think of our students as a community and we're wanting to build community like we would do in an on-campus class, I think that the benefit for students in working with each other, a lot of times students will be able to understand the content better from a peer. So many times if I have a question that's posted on a discussion board, I wait a little while and see if another student responds to the question. Many times the other students will sort of jump in and provide an answer instead of waiting for me to respond. And I think it really allows the students to recognize each other's expertise in different topics. I have found that my students are very creative, a lot of times much more creative than I can be. I think when we think about some activities and things, giving your student options of the kind of content that they would like to create. So one of the examples would be instead of using the YouTube videos, having the students do You Teach videos. doing maybe a virtual scavenger hunt, having students create mini lessons, or creating a wiki site. So I think having the options for students to be able to come up with what kind of content they would like to create. So for an example, in my class, I'll give the students an option that if they would like to create a PowerPoint, they can do a short video, they can do a paper. I give them the options. It's going to be shared with their classmates. And really by giving them more flexibility and more options, and they get the option to work with a partner if they want, I think really makes the class a lot more engaging, a lot more interesting for the students.
Let me answer a question. People are asking about what are UTeach videos. UTeach videos is an example that I did in my class, kind of a play on YouTube videos. No, uteach.com does not exist. UTeach, they're just what I called the videos, so instead of me teaching them, it was their chance to teach us. So it was my UTeach videos from my students, and they created videos on YouTube for, I teach some web design, and so it was little how-tos on things that I gave them a list of things that they could do, and they created little UTeach videos for the rest of the class. So they have, some of these other examples that Rechelle asked. If it's something that I'm going to use going forward, which is it's a great way to collect some of this content going forward. If it's something that is going to go forward, then I can capture it on YouTube so that it's accessible to folks who are going to be watching it in future semesters as well.
So I can tell you with my students that I tell them if they want to create a video that they need to use the captioning features within YouTube. And the feedback that I get from the students is that they really actually like captioning their own videos. So it also encourages them to be short, right? Mm-hmm. Short videos, things that they can take some ownership over. They share information on how to do it. So I really let them kind of consider the needs of the other students in the class.
Or I know a couple of mine worked from scripts to begin with, so the captioning was a lot easier. We better move ahead. Okay, so user-centered design means working with your users all throughout the project. So there's no poll question here. This is Donald Norman, who's a leader and author on the topic of user-centered design. He wrote The Design of Everyday Things, and it's really about design based on the needs of the user. And when we're doing this, then we're thinking about the needs of our students throughout the whole course, right? So we think about then learner-centered activities. And we already touched on this a little bit with the previous tip with students contributing content. But I think about, our community college students especially are coming from a range of abilities and experience with our discipline area. And so having some sort of refresher activity or refresher resources for students who might need to catch up on some of the prerequisite work, having those links and materials available to them. I know in my class have a lot of students who are pretty advanced in web design, and so I come up with dig deeper activities. So stuff to kind of allow them to move forward a little bit deeper with the material. Hopefully they come back and they share with the rest of the group, but giving them the opportunity to really, it's learner-centered. It's around what they need as a learner. Scaffolding for assignments. So I got this kind of cool time-saving tip I teach in Blackboard, but I know that you can create an item. So I have an assignment link, let's say, where they're submitting an assignment in Blackboard. What I do is I put a lot of extra help kind of information in an item, a Blackboard item, underneath that assignment. So it'll be templates to help with the assignment, or some extra tutorial links, or just stuff that I know is going to help some of my, my students who need more assistance. I don't give that to everybody though. That item is only displayed to people who will email me for help, or who express a need for that, so that I don't just openly share it with everybody. I could if I felt like I was getting a lot of response. If a lot of people needed that extra help, then I would give it to them. But I like challenging people up front. What I'll do in the assignment is I'll say, Katie has more help for you on this. If you need more help, if you need hints, just let her know, and she'll give you some more help. And then I release that. I can use adaptive release. I don't want to talk too much about that tip because it's kind of Blackboard specific, but I'm sure there's a way to do it in Canvas too. So So, more to come on that. And then giving them options for assignments. I saw this in a previous @ONE desktop seminar by Lene, talking about how she changed some of her writing assignments into presentations, and it kind of allows the students to really get more creative, let them decide what they want to do. For the more visual students, you'll find that all of a sudden they're much more expressive. Kiko, scaffolding is just giving the support, giving them the assignment, the support that they'll need to really complete that assignment. Some of them might need more support than others, but it kind of allows them to you can also think of it as a way to kind of like move through the assignment piece by piece, chunk by chunk, and what are the pieces of support that are going to help them move forward in the assignment. Good question.
So this isn't a poll, but if I were to ask, how many of you have heard this statement? Why did you take points off of my assignment? So rubrics are an excellent way to not only make your grading easier, but it makes the assignment a lot more clear for the students. So a well-organized rubric talking about what the expectations are. So giving an example, sure. So giving examples, clear feedback tools so that if the students have to write a paper that they know, okay, what exactly is the expectation. So I think a lot of times the challenges for students is that they're not really sure what the expectation is, or they don't really understand if you're having them do a discussion board and you say make 3 postings to the discussion board, what would be considered a good posting, or what would be something that would be beneficial? Not, yeah, sounds good, or I agree, probably aren't quality responses. So I think to include the rubrics, if they're rubric tools built into Blackboard and other learning management systems, as well as the other feedback tools, so as much feedback as you can give the students, giving samples from previous students. If you were requiring a student to use an APA format, giving them an example of an APA formatted paper. Sharing some of the common pitfalls and hurdles. So there are some, if there's a challenge or if there's something that you know that the students are going to have difficulty with, giving them as much information and direction as you can. Of course, the learning objectives are excellent reminders that the students will know by the end of this module, by the end of this chapter, by the end of this week, here's what you're going to have learned. And then a screencast of a finished product, I think, is an awesome idea. It's a great way to to be very clear in the expectations. Then when you're grading, it's much easier to look at your rubric and say, yes, that's a 3-point response or that's a 1-point response. Okay, I'll talk louder, Deanna. So the LMS is a learning management system. So they're kind of interchanged sometimes with CMS, course management system. So it's just an abbreviation.
Most of them come with with a rubric tool that you can attach to an assignment and make available to your students. I heard of a really great activity. Well, I got 2 tips from a conference I attended this week. One is, and I know in my class, I always give my students a sample of an A paper or of an A project. Like, here's what a previous A student got. But the recommendation that I heard was give them a C paper or a C project and tell them why it was a C and what would need to change. Or have your students take the C paper and grade it against the rubric and come up with the areas of improvement for that paper or that project, kind of as a preliminary activity so that when they're ready to do their own, it gives them that much more preparation for it. I thought that was cool too. And then, yeah, the learning objectives, I like the idea of, we always put the learning objectives at the beginning of the module, but I like the idea of putting the learning objectives at the end of the module. I know as a learner myself, I always get to the end of a chapter and I'm like, okay, what does now you know? What are you supposed to know? And I like kind of doing a quick little self-check. Like, oh wait, do I know that? No, I better go back and read that. Do I know that? Nah, not really. Oh yeah, I know that. It's just like a nice way to do a self-check. I actually think they're a little bit more helpful there than at the beginning of the module when they might be kind of out of context for students. All right, we're halfway there. Here's number 4. It's me or you? This is me. Okay, which of these spaces is designed for interaction? So we're looking, of course, at a classroom here. We know that we're doing, yes, this is our poll, back to option A and option B. So we know that we're teaching online classes, but if your class was an on-campus, right, which would more accurately depict your online classroom? Well, I have two different questions there, don't I? Which of these spaces is defined for interaction and which? Hopefully it's the same answer in your online classroom is designed for interaction. Sorry about that confusion. But we've got a lot of B responses. That's the one that's designed for interaction, isn't it? And that's how we want our online classes designed as well. I kind of think about this dichotomy. I think about this picture when I'm creating activities in my class. Is this a me kind of lecturing activity, or is this a student activity that's going to get them interacting?
And when you think about the round table, right, when we think about a round table, but everyone's at the same position at the table, you can see each other, you can actually communicate. So think about that in your online class. How would you create a, what if you only have an A classroom option?
Online you have the A or B classroom option. Yep. So we're talking student-to-student interaction here, right? So definitely start with an icebreaker activity so that they get comfortable with each other up front. Think about ways to introduce intrinsic interaction. So this is not easy. It's part of the design of an activity. By intrinsic interaction, I don't mean on the discussion board, post your response and then respond to two of your classmates. That's kind of response for the purpose of response and for the purpose of points. But if you create interaction that, that you're putting them into groups, which yes are yucky, but they work really well for interaction, where they have to work with someone and then come up with a, what are the design problems? Come up with the design problems on this website, or come back to me with where they have to interact just to get the work done. It's intrinsic to the design of the activity. So wikis and Google Docs are great for these because it doesn't mean that it has to be synchronous. Those are tools that would allow students to work together asynchronously and come up with lists of things together. They're interacting with each other that way. And it's the more tools you can make available to them, I think it's kind of nice to ask your students what tools they want to use. Don't assume, I like making the tools available and they decide how they want to work with each other, and then encouraging the community building. So saying, hey, like Rechelle said earlier about responding to each other on the discussion board questions that might come out in the classroom forum for folks who are confused, or say, hey, it's okay with me if you work together on this project. I think encouraging that is a good thing, and it's going to allow them to make that community, to build that community online.
And I think when I have found with the students that some students are really good at certain things and other students aren't so good. So they really start to work with each other to say, I'm really good at putting together the PowerPoint presentation, or I'm really good at writing the outline, and that they actually start to focus on the strengths that each other has in the group, and that they really, for the most part, students really work well together, although they may not like it. I think that the end product is usually a lot better than if they had done it just on their own.
And Deanna's asking if the discussion board suffices or if she needs more. I think that's a good question for your students. If they feel like that's a good enough tool for them, you might want to, it's not really a matter of, it's a matter of the interaction that's happening and not necessarily the tool. So I can't tell you, it'd be like the design of the prompts on your discussion board, or, but again, it's a really nice idea to kind of, and we'll talk about this, getting feedback from your students so that you know what worked for them and what didn't.
And I think also when you talk about discussion boards, you want to consider how many students you have in your class. Sometimes if you have 40 students all on one discussion board can make the discussion board a little overwhelming for students. So sometimes breaking the students up into smaller groups I think can be really helpful in a discussion board setting. So let's see, are we discussing hybrid or 100? I think it could really be either. I don't think it's, we're talking about online classes, but hybrid classes too. You could definitely create an online community with your students, having your students working on their assignments together online. I don't think it's really going to be that much of a difference.
And Candace is asking to redefine intrinsic interaction. So I mean that the interaction is a part of the design of the activity itself. So I don't have to tell them to interact with each other. I tell them, hey, you guys as a pair or as a team come up with, the principles of whatever. Go to these sites and come back to me with a little mini lesson on font design, for example, in my discipline, right? So, and then they have to work together. I didn't tell them, respond to each other 25 times and you'll get this many points. They're going to have to work together, and then they can kind of come back to me and tell me, how it went, but it's intrinsic to the design of the activity itself. And we're going to move forward because we are short on time.
So here's just a couple little thoughts. So the one quote says, "I've learned so much from my mistakes that I'm thinking of making a few more." And so what happens, and this isn't a poll question, just something to think about, what happens if a student makes a mistake in your class? So in this section, when we're talking about tolerance for error, they get an F. Look at Gina. Yeah, they get an F. Well, that might happen, but hopefully that's not how the class is designed, right? Hopefully they have multiple attempts at something. So designing opportunities to revise and improve. So allowing the students to grade themselves, having self-assessments is really beneficial at the start of each section, maybe having a quick little self-assessment or a practice quiz so that the students know that this really is just to teach you how to use the tool, see where you're at. You're not going to be penalized if you didn't get the questions correct. You'll just know what information you need to work on. So learning quizzes with multiple attempts, feedback that guides the learner to the correct answer. Many times the quizzes are designed where they just say, you're wrong, -1 point, and they don't really help the students learn the content. They really just penalize them for getting the response incorrect. So intermediate work products, so thinking about giving the students options instead of just submitting the paper one time. Okay, you can submit the outline first. We're gonna break it into sections. I'm going to give you feedback on each one of the components as you build it. So by the end, your paper should be looking pretty good. It wouldn't be something that you have to do an entire big thing at one time. So the frequency matters here. So I think that's something to consider, that if you're breaking it up, then the students have the opportunity to practice and to improve as they go through the course. So a low tolerance for error, that there isn't going to be one assignment that's either going to make it or break it for them in the class.
Right. This also comes up that how useful the rubrics can be, because you can have your students even grade themselves with that rubric prior to, or grade each other with that rubric prior to. I really like that. I know I use learning quizzes in my own class. I just let them take it as many times as they want. It ends up kind of being more like a participation quiz for the week. So there's really no reason why they shouldn't be in there, acing those quizzes every week. But I consider it more like their learning activity. That's where they're getting the material down. The more they take it, the better. All right, here we are. So no poll for this one. If there are multiple approaches for access, people aren't going to be excluded. Everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler. And then focusing on what matters. So really getting down to what our students need. And this is probably more traditionally what's thought of as accessibility. Now we're talking about tool accommodations. So text-based content for screen readers, making sure that our visually impaired students have access to the information on our screens, the content that we're giving them, captioned videos, right? So of course anything that's audio needs to be captioned. Extended time on tests. So here we're talking about your LMS, however it's set up. Hopefully your timed tests have a way that your DSPS students can utilize more time to complete those, including alt tags for images. So this is probably more of the stuff that you guys have seen in the other parts of the series. But pretty much what we're hoping to convey here is to avoid using fluff to accessorize your class, right? Using what your users need and not just adding bells and whistles that are going to be not usable for folks.
So, and I think when you think about an online classroom, that really the only accommodation, as far as I could consider coming from the SPS background, is an extended time on a test. And in my class, I give more than enough time. I usually give double time on tests because the tests are really such a small part of my class, and I want the students to take as much time as they need. Missing or not doing well on one quiz isn't going to have them fail the class. And I think that that really allows the students then to take their time and answer the questions thoughtfully. So I think thinking about the flexibility and the different needs of your students.
So for one thing that comes to mind is fluff. You know, I had an instructor get all excited because she figured out how to do the HTML scrolling marquee. And so they could have scrolling text across the page when the students came in. And to me, I mean, there's nothing gained from having scrolling text coming across the page. It's a distraction. It's not accessible to a lot of our students. So that's one thing that, one of the examples that comes to mind is fluff. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should be doing it. It might look, you know, cool to you, but it can add distraction and reduce the usability of the content.
And I think for students that would be visually impaired or using screen readers, if there's a lot of extraneous material that really doesn't have anything to do with the content of the course, it can really be a challenge for the students because they have to work through all of that extra stuff before they ever get to the actual heart of what your class is.
That's a really good example, Treva, the animated PowerPoint transitions. That can be very distracting too.
Yes. Or music that plays and can't be turned off, or something that the student doesn't have control over. So,
Rechelle is an avid gardener.
Yes, I am. And I love my trellis. So, gardeners use trellises to support and protect their growing plants. I love that visual, right? So I think about that for my online students. So think about what trellises can you use in your online class to support student learning. So, support, support, support.
Number one way to kick it up a notch
is to provide support. There are a lot of supports that are available for not only on-campus students but online students. So adding the hyperlinks for student services. So at our college, the students can have online tutoring. So the online links to online tutoring. There is a link to counseling services. There's a link to the disability support programs and services. There's a link to the tutorials for using Blackboard. There's an inclusion of a syllabus statement where I put right in there that says if you are a student who has a disability and encounters any issues with accessibility or needs an accommodation, please contact me. Or if you find a link that doesn't work. I mean, things happen. Sometimes the link's there one day and then it's gone the next. So including that information in your syllabus for all students. Checking in with students who are falling behind. That's another terrific option, right? It shows the students that you're a real person, that they're a real person, that you're involved, that there is support available if they're struggling in your class. Checking in with them, finding out, using the tools to be able to track the students' participation. Using the YouTube tutorials if needed for whatever the content is. There is a lot of caption materials available. You could create your own if there isn't something that you think meets your needs. You could get testimonials from previous students. Why were they successful?
Yeah.
What did they find helpful? What bits of advice? So I use those both in my face-to-face class and in my online classes, having students say, you know what, the key to this class is this. Or I really loved the textbook. I use the material still to this day. Whatever the case is, but using somebody that's not you, telling the students seems to be a real benefit for them. So, and also at the end of the class, asking your students for feedback. What worked? What didn't work? I give my students my own evaluation and I say, you know what, you'll get extra credit just for submitting it because I really want the class to be beneficial to you. So if there was an assignment that you really hated, okay, tell me why. What was it? What could I do to have made it more beneficial, to make it more interesting? What was it that you didn't like? So they're not penalized if they say something negative. I really want the feedback. So I'll ask them, you know, what was your least favorite, your favorite activity? And then, you know, really that they are our consumers, right? So we want the feedback. We want to make the improvements based on the needs of our students.
sometimes these questions, these design questions, come to us. Like, I mean, that sounds funny. So the first week of class, so here it is, you know, towards the end of the semester, and we're talking about getting tapping into your user's experience of your course, like what works and what didn't. When fall semester starts, you guys, we always get those same questions from our students. I can't find this link. How do I get to the discussions? How do I do that? I always tell myself, like, those questions, okay, so I've given them like links to the tutorials, I've given them the support material. Any other questions that they have are kind of like little cues to me that something is still not clear. Something can still be put in a better place or simplified or whatever it is that's going to make that more obvious to them. So kind of like instead of, you know, letting those questions, you know, overwhelm you the first week or two of fall semester or summer if you're teaching summer, but kind of allow those to just be like little reminders like, I wonder if there is a way that I can make that more clear. Those are your users that are encountering your website for the first time. And you know, we get so used to our classes, we know exactly where to go and how to use them. We're experts in our own classes, but that perspective of the brand new online student is very valuable in our classes.
And I think also if you get a question that you've had more than one time, post it as an announcement or post it into where everyone could see the response, because maybe they have the same question and they really weren't sure if they should ask. So a lot of times if a student asks, I wasn't sure how to find this information, instead of just responding to the student, I'll say, you know, one of your classmates asked about where this information was. So here is a short little video clip on how to find it, or here's the instructions in case you missed it. And I think that really kind of makes all of the students start to rely on, okay, I can ask questions, it's okay.
Look at that.
Look at our time here. So as a quick review, your online course usability, 10 ways to kick it up a notch, right for the web, chunked and sequenced content, a variety of content types, engage students with content, learner-centered activities,
clear expectations, having student-to-student interaction opportunities, using feedback, getting those resubmissions so that they can revise and improve. Of course, using accommodations with the tools that you utilize in your class, and the number one way to kick it up a notch, support, support, support.
And we went just a little over. We're not too far off, but we do have some time for questions.
You guys have been asking questions. We've kind of taken them as I've seen them come across the chat room, but are there any other questions from the group? It looks like we've got like 9 minutes so that we finish up on time for our captioner.
So while people are typing in their questions, I want to say thank you so much, Katie and Rechelle. We're going to keep moving here with the questions. I'll give you a chance to answer those. But before we move on, I want to send out my survey, which is for @ONE in our desktop webinar series, just so we can get your guys' feedback. Let us know how today's presentation was and what kind of things you'd like to see from us in the future, where hopefully we can get those on our schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat. I'm also going to go ahead and open that on your computer. So 1 second here.
So one of the questions I see for Sherry, where she was talking about, not to jump in, Anna, but I just saw that she said, should she get a certificate in instructional design? You know, @ONE offers some excellent courses in online teaching and online teaching certification. Those might be excellent courses for you to look at.
All right, so everyone should have gotten that survey open on your computer. Again, if you go ahead and complete that for us, we'll take a couple more questions if there's questions from anybody else. Trevor at LTCC asked, is @ONE creating a new 10 or 12-week program? Yes, we are in the process of developing a new 12-week program that will be a baseline for, we're not going to call it certification. There's a little bit different pathway that we're going with in partnership with OEI. But yes, it's going to be our foundational course, and it's going to be 12 weeks long. And we don't have an exact pilot date for that yet, but we are working as fast as we possibly can to get it out.
And then I think you also have you have our contact information. So if you had any other questions or anything that you might need, feel free to contact us.
I'm putting my Twitter handle in the chat room because Twitter is kind of my new way of connecting with people. I'm getting a lot of great information out there. So anybody who wants to find me on Twitter or my email address or any other way. So I'm happy to share any more information on the tips that we shared today. We turned our video back on and we know it. So that wasn't accidental. We just wanted to say hi again.
And there's my email address if you want to get in contact with me.
Hopefully you guys picked up some tips. If there is anything that you picked up and you just kind of want to follow up with us and say, hey, this really worked or this didn't work, or I mean, we're excited to kind of continue the conversation. So it'd be nice to know if you picked up something from our presentation that really worked well for you. We'd appreciate hearing back from you. So thanks everybody for joining. We'll hang out for a while.
So I want to say thanks again to our captioner for being here. Candace is asking, how do we save the chat? Candace, if you go to File, and then Save, and then you can select Chat. And as a reminder, everyone, you will receive an email on Monday with a link to the archive presentation as well as a link to where you can download the slides and participate in the survey. Yay. 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 It's early. It's awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. We were kind of cruising through.
Let out a breath. Okay. Yeah.